Hi everyone,
Hi everyone.
welcome welcome
Hello,
to this
everyone.
panel session on European schools panel. Right, thank you so much for taking the time on a Friday evening. I know there are other things going on in the world, so now is not the time to talk about Friday evening plans. But anyway, thanks for taking the time, and just for everyone who's watching us, the panelists, I will ask them more broader questions and ask them to introduce themselves. But just so that everyone knows that I'm covering three European schools today: London Business School, INSEAD, and Oxford side, and we have Pranjal, Puran, and Dheeraj joining me here, who are alums at these schools. And before we get into the introductions and an in-depth Q&A, I'm just going to run through a couple of boring slides, and just bear with me, and then we'll jump right into Q&A. All right. All right. So, I just wanted to introduce myself. I on this panel I represent the Red Pen. The Red Pen is a higher education consulting company, and we are based out of India, and but we service clients globally across early advising, undergraduate, postgraduate, MBA, and boarding schools. And we've been around for 10 years. And the stats that you see on the screen are some of our statistics for the MBA admission cycle. As you might have guessed already, I head the MBA admissions consulting services at the Red Pen. And most of our applicants apply to global top 25 programs, with a concentration of programs mainly in US and Europe. um, these were some of our interviews and admits for the application cycle that just concluded. Usually this is where our results are year on year, so honestly presenting this slide to me is great, because this it's pretty consistent year on year. um, the topics that we will cover today on these three European schools primarily is school research, MBA programs in Europe versus US, something which everyone always wants to know: what are the differences? How should I choose? We'll cover a bit about career opportunities and return on investment. We'll speak about program duration, because European programs are typically 1 year. We'll talk about some resources for entrepreneurs, because with a huge wave of startups and family business and entrepreneurs, like just catching up, especially during COVID, post COVID, we want to understand what are the resources available at these schools for entrepreneurs. um, MBA application, process and tips, because that's on everyone's mind as we get into the new application cycle. We'll touch upon a bit on internship experience, so that these panelists can share with us what their internship experience was like, and how to go about securing an internship, and how to kind of try to convert that into a full-time job. And we'll speak a bit about scholarships, and then we'll move on to uh, you know the uh, the Q&A from the audience. All right. So just to this is just a very quick and dirty overview of the three schools, just so that everyone has an understanding of what we are kind of looking at in terms of class size. As you see, INSEAD is the largest, because it does combine class size across two major campuses, even though they have four. I'm talking just mainly primarily about France and Singapore. GMAT range, kind of varies, but it's varied. And I do want to just tell everyone that when you say GMAT range, typically for Indian applicants, or applicants from highly competitive countries, usually the average tends to be a lot higher. Work experience, as you all see, European programs do tend to require higher number of years of work experience, though INSEAD has relaxed that requirement in the recent years. So they do say 3 to 8 years. We have known people to go to who have went to INSEAD even with the 2 years experience. Average age, are pretty much at par with what I said. And alumni strength, of course, it's much higher for Oxford, I think, as a university. But Oxford Business School, Side Business School, is slightly newer, so slightly lower compared to London Business School and INSEAD. And INSEAD, of course, has the strongest alumni strength, because because of their campuses, and then they have a class size of 1,000 every year. Um, these are some of the notable alums, and there are of course a lot more, including the three which which I'm going to be talking with today. Without further ado, this is our panel today. Pranjal from London Business School, Puran from INSEAD, and Dheeraj from Oxford side. Thank you so much, guys, for taking the time out today to speak with me. And I would like you all to introduce yourselves. With couple of things. I want you to share your name, the business school you went to, and when did you graduate. I also want you to tell me where do you work currently, what do you do, and three things that you loved about your life in business school. You can go in any order.
Happy to speak with that. Yeah, so hi everyone, this is Pranjal Singh. Graduated in just about a few months back in 2021 in London Business School, the MBA program. There's only one kind, the 2-year one, and that's the one I joined in. And yes, that is the one that also squarely coincided with COVID. Yeah, currently I'm working in Stockholm with Ericsson Management Consulting. It's basically the internal consulting arm of Ericsson. And for some of you who may not be familiar with the overall business of Ericsson at the moment, we no longer make phones, but we make everything that allows your phone to get internet. So quite important stuff. In terms of the second part of the introduction about the three things about my MBA that I really liked. I think for me, one of the most important deciding factors for which school to apply was the location. So I found London to be one of the most attractive locations personally for myself, because I did not see for personal reasons, myself applying to US. And and London does not disappoint. So I think that would be my first favorite thing about the MBA, the sheer number of opportunities. London as a diverse city, if you want to build a long-term career or want to settle there. It's quite another thing that I didn't end up finally settling in London, at least for now. But the other thing that really got me interested in LBS, and I really loved later, was also the fact that LBS provides a very diverse set of opportunities. So it's not a tech school, it's not a consulting school like a lot of people believe, it's not a finance school like a lot of people believe. It's a bit of everything. So you have students, so people entering into consulting in a big way, with McKinsey, BCG, and Bain hiring, or with banks, or with tech. And I think that kind of flexibility lets you decide even when you're inside the MBA program. And the third thing that actually I loved about the program was also the tailored flexibility within the program. So largely, the flexibility that I'm talking about is that right from the 6-month period of your MBA, like when the first 6 months end, you can totally decide what courses you want to take. You can do concentrations, which are uh, informal specializations, but you do get certifications for it. So you can decide on what your MBA should be like. So a lot of my peers and I got the opportunity to study subjects we really wanted to focus on. And given that MBA is a mid-careers degree, we all come with experiences, we all come with strengths and ideas in what we want to do post MBA. So I think that is really important. So those are three things. Hope it wasn't too long.
Sorry, I was on mute. Yeah, no, thank you so much, Pranjal. Puran, Dheeraj, any one of you want to go first?
Hi, sure enough. I'll go first as we'll keep doing the Pele app thing. So hey guys, Paran went to INSEAD a couple of years ago. I'd say, what I do right now is a management consultant, and coincidentally, I do actually strategize for the Red Pen among other clients in a marketing capacity, of course. Three things about business school that I absolutely loved. I'd say the first thing about INSEAD that I absolutely loved was the diversity. It's sort of in the tagline, the business school for the world, which I know is a little cheesy, but actually, I remember by like month 6 or 7, I remember not hearing accents anymore. Like whether it was like someone who was like Scottish or Irish or Russian or whatever. Like I remember the first 6 months, you're sort of like, hey, can you say that again? Can you say that again? But like you get so used to hearing so many different accents, it just sort of becomes second nature. And I remember like not even noticing that anymore. And that's definitely a part of the NCR culture. Um, for me, number two was the acceptance as part of the culture. So something you don't read on the INSEAD website or hear about from consultants in particular is INSEAD, the culture is all about you are who you are, and whether it's race or religion or whatever or anything else, and everyone is accepted and everyone's opinion is valid, and so that's the thing I think I really appreciate. And so right now, some of my best friends in the world are still from INSEAD. We're still really active on WhatsApp. And that kind of takes me to the third thing about INSEAD, which is the trips. So God, there were so many trips we went, whether it was Asia, whether it was Europe, or like Abu Dhabi, or the US. We were always traveling. I think I saw 22 countries in that 1 year, which was just like, we were always on trips, just constantly, besides studying, of course. I should maybe put the academics somewhere in there as well. But like, besides the academics, of course, there was all the trips. So that was really fun. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So I'll go last. And my name is Dheeraj. I am probably the oldest in the panel in terms of when I started the MBA. So I finished the MBA in 2016. It was a 1-year program. I come from a technology, market research, and consulting background. And I worked pre-MBA in the EMEA region, primarily in the Middle East and in Africa. And after the MBA, I shifted gears and I moved into the fintech domain, which is where I currently also work. So I'm a director in a fintech company, but I also work in the edtech space, and I do a lot of advisory work for startups. And since 2016, I've been doing a lot of volunteering and commercial paid work with a lot of kids applying to universities and applicants to business schools as well. And I volunteer at my kids' school. I build huge jigsaw puzzles, and I love to ski. What I loved about business school, for me, there were 3 things at Oxford. I've only been to 1 business school, but for me, there's sort of 3 key things which stood out. The first one was the community. I felt very supported. I went to business school with a wife and a very, very young child. I wanted to travel with my family, and I felt like the community there was just solid, not just for myself, but for my family. So, if they're happy, I'm happy. So that worked out. The second, so this includes sort of the faculty, the access, the overall environment, the safety, all the key parameters within. The second sort of key dimension was the people. So my peers were spectacular. I was well traveled, been to about 40 countries, lived in 4 countries globally, but my peer base was fantastic. The faculty was amazing as well. So I was just simply blown away. I was expecting fireworks, but these were explosions at Oxford. So I was really blown away. The third thing was the rigor, right? So this really changed my approach and how I approach things in life, right? My work, anything. The kind of rigor that was seen, applied to even everyday tasks was out of habit, with my peers and sort of friends. I was very inspired, and that has really changed how I approach things in daily life. Sometimes to a deterrent, but nonetheless, it was very interesting. But those are the 3 key things which stood out about my time at Oxford. Back to you, Preeti.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much. I think I also learned a thing or two in all your introductions itself, which is great. And just so that everyone knows, I'm not really an expert on European schools, contrary to what people think, because people come to the Red Pen and they feel that I know everything. So I just want to give that disclaimer out there. But we do have a fantastic team, who know about European schools, including, some who are on the panel. Like Dheeraj said, he is a consultant with us, and, he's had some fantastic results for some of our students, especially, in with tech backgrounds. So feel free to look him up and, hit him with questions even after this panel. But so moving into all the information that we want to kind of share today, why did you guys choose this school when you all were applying? What made you choose this particular school, that I'm excited about this school? What stood out for you?
Sure, I can go first. I think for me, it actually had to do with my age. So I was 31 when I applied. And I kind of just first of all looked at all the school profiles. So the American schools in particular, like HBS, Kellogg, and all, Columbia too, Preeties from Columbia. I noticed the average age was younger. They were all doing like 26, 27. Whereas the European programs were 29 at that point in time. So I first of all realized that I fit better with the European programs. And then secondly, it was I guess my experience. Like I'd spent a lot of time in India, but a lot of time in the US already, and I kind of wanted to remain in the West. So for me, like location was the second factor that helped me apply to INSEAD. And finally, I think like you know INSEAD, I think some of the European programs, as you know, they're all 1 year. I realized that if had taken a 2 year program, I'd have gotten a little bored with the basics. Especially, I was an economics major. I had like 7 years work ex, and so I think it was a bunch of contributing factors that had me lead to. Obviously, there was like the goals and other stuff too, but I think generally speaking, I just saw a better fit in terms of like who I was and what I wanted out of life with the European programs and INSEAD in particular. So yeah. Dheeraj, what about you?
I really didn't think that much why I applied to Oxford. I just found that my engagement with the current students and the admissions committee was nice. I was also looking at a program which again worked out for me and my family. I wasn't willing to sort of go away for 2 years. I was also relatively older, so I was in my early 30s as well. So I wanted a short program, and yeah, and I somehow, somehow you get a feel of the place, right? Once you speak to a couple of folks. So I did some basic research and spoke to a few people, liked it, went ahead, applied. I felt like I fit in there, and I went ahead with it. I don't regret it. It was a fantastic experience. Whether it was a thorough experience or not, I don't know. In hindsight, I could have done a lot more and found a better fit, but this is what I did, and I'm fairly happy with the outcomes. So yeah, not the perfect answer. Pranjal?
So I think unlike both the previous answers, I think when I did my MBA, I was fairly on the younger side, so it was also a harder decision to make because the question sometimes is this the right time to do an MBA? Because everybody around me seems to be doing it at a slightly later period, but should I still apply nonetheless? And so I decided to take the plunge. And one of the reasons I applied to LBS were pretty clear to me, at least in my head at the time, that I did not see myself settling long-term in the US because being an only child, I felt responsible to be connected to my parents, and I just felt US might just be a bit too far. And if I was to look for post-MBA opportunities, I found it was a much more stable environment because this is 2019, the height of the Trump era of sorts, with the immigration issues and things like that, which I felt it just made a lot more of a stable future prospects within Europe in London, because it's an English-speaking geography, and while the Anglosphere itself is a debatable concept, there is a lot of natural proclivity for an Indian to be in London or in UK. And it just made sense. All of it really made sense. But even from a business school perspective, I think I had a lot of people from LBS in my pre-MBA job role in the same organization. Some of the people I really looked up to were from LBS, and that I think really makes a big difference because it's a huge investment. It's a huge both in terms of time and money. So you look for proof points, and if you know people who or if you've had interactions with people who've done that program and they say it's a great program, it just feels like a much more personalized advocacy for that program. And I think that was probably both the advocacy aspect as well as the Europe aspect together spoke to me loud and clear for LBS.
All right, Pranjal, I'm going to continue with you. For London Business School. Now, it's a moot question that London is extremely important to the whole experience at London Business School. Similar, for me when I went to Columbia, New York was like very central to the experience, which is why I applied to Columbia. So, how important is the city of London to the whole LBS experience? How let's say, how, if I ask you, how did a day in your MBA life like look like, and how did London sort of transform that experience?
So
And the
I think
question on that.
so I think that question has two answers. One is pre and one is post COVID. Or during COVID. And I think what's more relevant is I think the way things are going, the pre-COVID answer. But the idea is London is, you're right, it's extremely central, and and a big contributing factor to that is LBS is in the center of London. It's literally in zone one, and as a result, you have access to these amazing opportunities to go to company offices. For example, for my internship recruitment, one day I would find myself in the office for Bain, another day in the office for McKinsey, another the day at maybe AB in Bev, and you realize how centrally located you are to avail of those opportunities to meet up with the right people. At the same time, if I want to meet someone who's an LBS alum and they work in London, and a lot of them do, it's so much easier. So I think that there are basic, that's one side of the answer, I would say. Trying to get those opportunities to interact with the right people, interact with the right recruiters right from day one, as early as you want. The second is probably the kind of co-curricular internship opportunities you get, because I think Preeti, since you're from Columbia, it's I think it's also a thing with Columbia in New York. You get the opportunity to work part-time during the term quite a bit, and with a lot of and London is hugely vibrant with tech, with fintech, with consulting. So it's just a lot of different opportunities keep popping up where you can just do something part-time. And because it's a 2-year program, you can also spread your workload very flexibly. So I had, for example, months in one part of my MBA where I was only attending one class in a whole term, and I spent the rest of the time working on a part-time internship with a tech startup, which I had literally no idea I would ever end up doing. But because it was London, those opportunities were there. I just ended up doing it. So I think London gives you those co-curricular opportunities quite a bit. And just to say how the day looks like is pretty much you have your and beginning is obviously a bit hectic because you have all these courses which span through the day. Because these core courses, they try to squeeze them as early as possible in the first term. But after that, your day looks like pretty much as you want it to look like. You might have a couple of courses to go to the campus. You inevitably end up living somewhere around campus because obviously that's where everybody is. You want to be around people, but you also end up spending a lot of time meeting recruiters, me going to part-time internship offices, etc. So I think it's a very fluid answer to us to say. Even post-COVID, I think that while you did not go to places, you did not be. I mean, I don't think I went to campus for almost a year because of COVID, but you still had these amazing engagement opportunities where LBS clubs would organize something in one of the parks in London. So, or recruiters would organize like an event in a park because that's allowed. And so you see that that is only possible because it's London, because it has that kind of vibrancy, that willingness to really make changes, to do new things.
Sorry. That's great. Given that you said that LBS is like in zone one, I feel it compares more to maybe NYU Stern, because NYU Stern is right there, in East Village, whereas Columbia is like 116th Street. You have to like just go at the far end of the city. But I do agree that the whole big city experience is very ingrained into the whole business school experience. And the other question I had for you, Pranjal, is how has the new graduate visa improved post MBA job opportunities? Do you see, in fact, that question, I would like you and Dheeraj both to kind of take. So, Pranjal, I think you can go first, and Dheeraj, maybe you can follow up.
Sure. So I think my batch was the first one to get the graduate visa program, and a lot of my classmates have done that. So just to give you a quick background, I think starting 2016 or 17, UK government made it mandatory for students to leave within, I think, 2, 3, or 4 months of their studies getting over. So if you didn't have a tier 2 or a working visa at that point, you had to leave the country, and then it's a bit of a hard ball to get back. But what the graduate visa's idea is to give people an opportunity to work on a self-sponsored basis for a limited period of 2 years. And in that period, they can either find themselves an opportunity, or if they're working for 2 years with a company, they can just kind of build credibility to actually convince their employers to sponsor them at the end of the 2-year period for a skilled worker visa. That's what it's called now. But the idea is where it really changes things is not with your traditional McKinsey, Bains, and BCGs, because they anyway sponsored in the past. It's for people who are really looking to tech startups, for internships in or some kind of more from less traditional roles, as well as a lot of corporate roles, because that's where you typically find companies are a little more reticent when it comes to sponsoring, because sponsorship itself is a expensive process, and they may not want to spend that kind of money on you unless they're sure. So, for example, even big companies like Unilever and Diageo, you typically find them not willing to sponsor on the get-go. But a lot of my classmates have managed to land very interesting roles, and ranging from tech startups to these corporates on this visa. And they have the strategy to try and work there for at least 2 years, build that kind of proof points for themselves, and transfer to a working visa. But then that said, there is that it's a limited time visa. So it's a personal preference on whether you want to leverage that out as an opportunity, or still keep trying for something which gives you a working visa right at the outset.
Do you have any thoughts on that, Dheeraj? Because I think this probably did not exist when you graduated, and this is probably a new thing that you see.
Sure. So my feedback will be largely anecdotal. So Pranjal gave a excellent primer of the situation. I was well, I don't know, unfortunate is the right word, but I was in the cohort when Brexit happened, and this whole law came into practice in 2016. Is the year I graduated. So, but anecdotally, I have spoken to clients and applicants who've switched preferences and are exclusively looking at the UK. LBS, Oxford, and Cambridge, primarily because of this regulatory change, or this practice of allowing candidates to stay longer. And it's not just folks who want to go into non-traditional roles or social impact roles and stuff like that. It's people who want to go into finance and consulting as well, just to hedge their bets. So this is purely from a advisory point of view and talking to clients. And absolutely, were this the case when I was a student, it would be hugely beneficial to my cohort, because I just generally think that my cohort, or the UK, lost a lot of talent, and a lot of my cohort peers moved to other markets where they're doing great, but they would have loved to continue in the UK. So that's all I can add to Pranjal's notes.
Okay, great. So since you are, since I had that question for you, Dheeraj, can you just share, how that business schools which are affiliated to both Oxford and Cambridge are connected to the community within the larger university, right? How did the whole, and you and I spoke about this, that, you shared that, the whole Oxford University experience is very crucial, just like the London experience is crucial to LBS. It's all the whole Oxbridge, university experience is very crucial to, when you're pursuing an MBA either at side or judge. Just share, how did you, take advantage of those opportunities at the larger university? How did they, you know, transform your business school experience?
Sure. So I wasn't particularly well researched on this front. I hope my insights will help you going to either Oxford, or even this might even apply to, actually it will apply to even Cambridge. But essentially the MBA experience at Oxford was, maybe part of it was at the business school, but I'd say almost half, maybe even more than half, was in the wider Oxford ecosystem, right? So you're doing a lot of stuff outside the business school. You are, you're part of a college, first of all, which is not your faculty, and you tend to often stay at that college. All your social activities are at that college. You tend to dine at that college quite frequently, and what this means is a lot of cross-contamination of ideas, right? So you're talking to somebody doing a physics minor, somebody else doing some work on climate policy change. You're speaking to faculty professors who work in psychology, and if you have some ideas, you can really sort of have those intimate conversations with these individuals fairly regularly. So those really were some defining sort of features of the Oxford experience, where you have an impressive set of peers in your cohort, which you're sitting with, engaging during your lectures and tutorials and discussions. But then you have this other set of individuals who are completely different from you, whose goals are not commercial in nature at all, who are potentially pursuing an entire career of just pure research, highly intelligent people, and very focused. And then you're sort of exploring ideas and potentially commercial opportunities with these individuals. So that's very interesting. And by extension, the social element of the overall university also becomes very interesting. You have debate, you have a lot of debates. You have the union, which is a sort of a world recognized organization where some very prolific speakers come and talk. So yeah, I would say that if you're looking at Oxford and if you're looking at SAID and doing research, look into the wider Oxford ecosystem and see whether that works for you, if that's what you want. If you want, if you're ready to leverage, access to those opportunities, those events, those faculty members, those individuals, that can really help you sort of get ahead and potentially achieve your goals faster. Yeah, I think that's really it.
All right. I had another question for you, Dheeraj, but I'll come back to that later. Now, Puran, I had a question for you regarding, INSEAD and the whole global experience, right? Now, INSEAD
Yeah.
brands itself as the business school for the world, and they emphasize on a lot of global experience in their applications. How can applicants showcase that global brand to appeal to admissions officers? Because we get a lot of students who, a lot of Indian applicants, all over the world, who have sometimes travel. If you're already situated, in some part of the world, hope there's a good chance you've traveled here and there, and But
Yeah.
let's say we are talking about Indian applicants who have maybe traveled for personal reasons. They don't have a work experience. So do they have no seat at INSEAD? Should they not even try? How does this global or international experience at INSEAD, how to contextualize this for applications?
Yeah, very good question. So I think the first thing I'd say, if you want to showcase, put your best foot forward, just like you're doing, Preeti, say the word. You're just saying it very well, by the way. INSEAD. I think I've heard INSEAD a lot everywhere. So I think the first thing you should do is in your interviews, make sure you can say INSEAD. Secondly, how do you showcase the globalness? I think it has to do with having like a meaningful cross-cultural experience. And the answer is in the logo itself, like in the business school for the world. The answer is in the word world. Really, if you look at the history of INSEAD, like it actually was born after World War II, I believe, when Europe was devastated. And the idea was like the European leaders realized that they basically they need to start speaking the same language and learn to communicate across cultures. And that's why INSEAD was born. It's sort of like the same, similar to the UN, with the same ideals, and so I think when you present your essay, it's really important to have that level of depth and experience when you talk about other cultures. So it's not something superficial like, oh, Americans, talk loud, or your Russians speak differently or whatever. Like, and those are very superficial observations that the essays that I've personally reviewed, because I've had a lot of people hit me up for essay reviews. And I just find that sometimes you can tell when they're skin deep. You can have a person really is like faking an experience or trying to find insight, or they've read somebody else's essay and are trying to trying to seem like they've had a great cross-cultural experience. So to me, I think that's the point. Like, make sure the learnings are authentic and they're deep, and you can really speak to you and another culture. Now, I know a lot of Indians. So in our class, for sure, we had the IIT kids who were all brilliant, all got recruited by Amazon, and they all had like the quant folks, and there were the poets like myself. So I think so there's definitely enough diversity within the INSEAD class. I think that both sides can live there. One last observation. Sorry, I know I'm rambling. I think if you have never left India and never had like a client who's cross-cultural, the way to showcase that insight can also be like when you experienced another, like if you were North Indian, how you worked with like a South Indian company or client, if you were from the West, like how you, Bombay, Delhi, like that could be part of your essay, you don't have to have an essay that's like, India with like China. You can talk about how Bombayites, you moved to Delhi and it was a different experience, so I'd say as long as you're willing to, you can showcase that depth, then yeah, I think you have your essays right there,
All right. I think I need to hurry with the questions because there's so many questions coming in. So I think at some point of time I'll start weaving, questions from the audience with my own questions. So Puran, continuing on INSEAD now. Of the campuses that INSEAD has, France and Singapore are the most popular, and this is a question that we get, when we are, handling inquiries which come in at the Red Pen. That why would you recommend one campus over the other, and why? What would be the
Yeah.
significant advantages of one over the other?
Yeah. So I think something every counselor tells you is that like you should go with your goals, and you want to go with like the second half of your experience, you want to be where you want to recruit. So if you want to recruit in the West, then you can start in Singapore, spend 4 months there, and then you can spend the last 6 months in France, which is closer to the UK and the US for recruiting, right? So that was that. For me personally,
But that is possible. You can switch between campuses.
yeah, that's a really good point. So the first 4 months you're on one campus, and then all hell breaks loose and everyone transfers like every 2 months to different campuses. So not only can you transfer between 4 INSEAD campuses now, but you can also transfer to Wharton or Kellogg or some of the American business schools for just for 2 months. You can recruit over there and come back. So my point is like literally the last 6 months in INSEAD, people just coming and going constantly, your roommates, your classmates, you sort of get used to just like absolute people traveling from anywhere and everywhere. And I said the Wharton kids come on campus as well. So yeah, that's INSEAD for you the last 6 months.
Brilliant. See, I learned something new. I had no idea. I did have some questions about Oxford and LBS. I think there are these questions which are coming in. So I'm going to jump to I'm going to come back to this, but I'm going to jump a little bit to the applications because everyone is interested that you can we speak more about the application process. Now, when you were navigating the MBA application process, what was the toughest part of an MBA application process for these European schools for you, and what are the most common mistakes that you see applicants make when they are applying to European programs? I do want to share that, by the way, everyone, all the panelists have helped applicants with their MBA applications to European programs. So they're definitely qualified to answer this question. So I want you guys to share that what are some of the common mistakes that you think, because to me a European school application, MBA application to a European program is very straightforward. They're not asking these in-depth questions like, let's say, like a Columbia would ask about what's your favorite movie, book, or song, or Kellogg would say what are your values, that shaped you. They're not those kind of questions. They're pretty straightforward about your goals, about your work experience. How do you think your work experience along with the MBA will help you achieve your career goals? London Business School asks a question in its application form which talks about how is your family and your friends, your close network, how are they going to support you through your journey. It's pretty straightforward questions. There's no way to kind of go around and kind of craft something. So I think research, I feel, is very, very important to these programs. You have to really know the school. You really need to know where you stand and how they benefit you. But it's a highly competitive space. So I want all of you all to answer this question. Go, one by one. The three challenges three or whatever number of challenges that you guys faced, and the mistakes which you see applicants make to these programs. Francis, let's start with you.
Go ahead.
Sure, thanks. So I think for me, at least from the LBS perspective, I think what was really, I think I made that mistake initially, and that I thankfully managed to course correct pretty much in time. But is if you look at in general at the European schools essays, I think there's a very central element of clarity of like what you really want to do, and it's not about what you should want to do. It's just basically what you really want to do, and there is a balance there between does the experience that you have really qualify you for those kind of roles, or like you puts you in a position to want to do those things. And the second element is, are they aspirational enough to justify the kind of spending, the kind of investment you make with the MBA? So I think having that clarity of your goal and whether that goal really requires an MBA is the question that everyone should be asking themselves, rather than looking at going from pillar to post, saying, this sounds like a great goal for that justifies me going to LBS or INSEAD or SIDE. One needs to really think about what is it that I really want to do, be extremely clear and authentic about that goal. And I think that's something of a challenge in itself. For example, LBS essay is super straightforward. What is it that you'd want to do in the long term? What is it that you want to do in the short term, and how does LBS fit in the picture? So start literally with your goal. And that's what most people don't do. They start with the school. They say, okay, the school recruits people recruit for consulting in the school, so I want to do consulting. No, that is not literally true. You can be anything and anyone. You make your MBA to be what it is. Your MBA doesn't make your career. So with that mindset, I think you have a much clearer picture on what you want to say in your essay. And if you have that clarity, it reflects in your essay. It brings authenticity to your essay that schools really appreciate, in my opinion. And just to top that up, I think the idea is also to think of it from the school's perspective, that anyone they admit is likely going to be willing to pay the fee and be a part of the community. What they are really looking for in a candidate is this someone who is going to make it big in the things they want to do? And that passion that you have to put out really differentiates you, that this is a passionate person who really wants to do what they're saying, and they will succeed in life, and they will bring a great brand to the school, and they will also do great things for themselves in life with this MBA.
Sure, I guess I can go next. The one thing that I'd say applicants don't do is school research. And similar to Pranjal said, I think they start with the school and then they try to figure out their goals, as opposed to figuring out their goals and then figuring out the schools. So a really common thing, actually, it's one of the questions here too, has to do with visas. I think especially if you're an Indian citizen, it's really important to look at, for example, INSEAD, just because you're in France doesn't mean you have to work in France. I worked in Germany for 4 years, and I recruited in the UK, and I recruited in the US as well, and Canada also. So I recruited in just NATO, the whole NATO area pretty much. So I think it's very important to sort of to research that and to speak to alums like me who've been through recruiting. And we know, for example, when McKinsey comes to recruit, they recruit for all the European and all the Middle Eastern offices from INSEAD, among LBS and Oxford as well. But they come, so that's my point. So if your essay says, I want to work in McKinsey, but I want to work in the New York office, that's a total mismatch of your goals. Why would you go to INSEAD? Then you should actually go to Columbia, or you should go to NYU, So it's very important to for your goals to line up with what the school offers. Because remember, at the end of the day, these are still corporations, right? Or they still have businesses. And so they care about the recruitment stats, they care about the practicality, and they want to make sure that you also succeed. If you have these goals that are completely outrageous and completely impossible, they're not going to let you in. And so my advice to you is, the reason why an MBA application takes 6 months is because you should really do a good, honest reflection, and you should actually reach out to alumni like us constantly and say, verify your goals and make sure they're possible and tangible. Don't just write stuff and just for the sake of submitting to as quickly as you can. Those are the kids who get rejected. So yeah. Dheeraj?
So this is a two-part question. In terms of challenges, I didn't find the application very challenging, to be very honest. It's very straightforward. At my time, there was no video essays, but even if it were there, I think I'd be fine. The other sort of side of the question was related to the essay. Sorry.
The mistakes which applicants make, what the common mistakes.
Yeah, sort of feedback or advice for people who are applying right now. Now, I think your CV has to line up. Each school has something which they want. I noticed that for Oxford in particular, at that time, I had sort of fairly international experience and well-traveled, rapid career progression. They never mentioned anything around international experience at that time, but I feel like it was one of the factors which helped me land a place at Oxford. They more explicitly mention this on their website right now. So that kind of research, I think, is quite important. But I think beyond that, there's nothing additional which I think I can add on top of what Puran and Pranjal have already mentioned.
Okay, brilliant. I do have some more questions around the application process, but in the interest of time, I do want to take some questions which are coming in. So one question is, and any one of you can take this question. For someone who wants to work with VCs in the content tech space, which MBA course would you guys suggest?
Um, I'll start, but hopefully someone else can add as well. So if you look at the history of the San Francisco campus at INSEAD, it was opened only just 2 years ago. And so it's part of why you should do school research. It was actually opened for this. It was actually meant to be like an incubator for anyone interested in entrepreneurship or to work with VCs, I guess, in any kind of, and obviously San Francisco is a tech hub. And if you look at Peter Zemsky, who's the dean of one of the deans, I guess, who opened up the campus, that's exactly what he says. So do research, and then if you understand, as I said, these are companies like INSEAD and all these schools, so they're looking for people who want to work in the San Francisco campus now that the pandemic is mostly over, and are willing to go there and incubate their projects over there. So I'd say and that's a dead. Pretty much every alumni in INSEAD knows that they're desperate to recruit for people who want to go to the US. So huge tidbit, if that's part of your goals, genuinely, don't fabricate it. If it's part of your goals, that you should consider that as part of your narrative for the essays. Yeah.
All right. So there's another question. It's a long question, but what they're asking is basically about entrepreneurs, startups, and family business. So there's this wave of entrepreneurship and startups, right, across the world, and more entrepreneurs now wish to pursue an MBA, right? Those numbers are people are not like, oh, I want a fancy MBA on my resume because I want this next fancy job at the next any Fortune 500 company. I don't want to name anything or anyone, but now students are the applicants genuinely want to go to business school because they see value in formal business education and the community and the networks that you develop and the environment in which you study and how that kind of transforms the way you think about situations, whether it's a personal situation or a professional situation. I usually think that there's no difference in the kind of personal skills that you develop after business school, because business is about people, right? So that transformative experience helps you like across all dimensions of life. Now, what resources are available for entrepreneurs at your respective schools?
I can I can take a stab at this. So, at Oxford, if you enter the school and you turn right, you will see the Entrepreneurship Center, and there's tons of resources in the school. Um, and this varies. This ranges from the seed fund, which provides funding, to various courses and initiatives which are provided. Now, all the information around this is very easily available on the website, so I don't want to repeat anything which is published. But there's beyond this, and this is more interesting, is that due to how the school is structured and how the program is structured, the opportunity for engagement with other students and other faculty members exists, where you can have sort of free flowing ideas around various topics with individuals or faculty members from the School of Government, from the Department of Oncology. It really is a very broad range, and this is where a lot of ideation happens. When it comes to actually developing ideas, the Entrepreneurship Center comes in, and there's some other sort of establishments or entities within the Oxford ecosystem as well. And then finally, the funding is also supported by these entities. Now, it really is up to you, what kind of initiative you take. But these resources and these establishments are readily available as a student or as an alum if you want to engage with them later on in life.
Awesome. Pranjal, you want to go next?
Sure. So I think much as in line with what Dheeraj said, LBS also has a very vibrant ecosystem for any budding entrepreneurs. From the curricular side, there's the entrepreneurship summer school that you apply for. So instead of an internship in your summer, you do the summer school, where you get coached by some of the most prolific product managers and professors in LBS, and as well as maybe some actual entrepreneurs from the business side of things. Then from a like a co-curricular perspective, there's the LBS Hackathon, LBS, which LBS Hack, I believe that's what it's called. And then you also have the LBS Launchpad, which is a 2-month incubator. Both these are sponsored by the Entrepreneurship Club, which is otherwise quite active as well. You can connect with the LBS alums who are first generation entrepreneurs themselves. So it is quite a vibrant ecosystem of skills and connections you make within LBS that help you succeed as an entrepreneur, either in London or in any other geography. But that said, I think I can actually think of quite a lot of my classmates who had no idea that they wanted to be entrepreneurs and decided just being in LBS to pursue something of their own, and some of them are doing really, really well already.
Brilliant. Puran?
I think I just kind of said the same thing earlier. The San Francisco campus helps you build entrepreneurship, and then yeah, all schools have the competitions. In fact, I posted that when I was there. It was like the Shark Tank version at INSEAD, so it was super fun. But yeah, stuff like that, it happens at all campuses. So yeah.
Brilliant. I have I had a ton of questions for you guys, but the kind of questions which are coming in, I feel it won't be fair if you don't take these questions. So I think, given in the interest of time, let's just switch to the questions which are coming on from everyone. Now, okay, there were two questions specifically for you, Puran. One is INSEAD's 10-month MBA. This is from Rudra Thakur. To Mr. Puran, INSEAD's 10-month MBA program seems like a high-pitched, high-stakes scenario where it comes to making the most out of it. What strategy, if any, did you use to your benefit?
Yeah. One quick note, just in case I don't answer questions, you can hit me up on LinkedIn and I can answer them there, just in case we don't have time. To answer your question, the number one skill, oh my God, prioritization. Because the clubs, the academics, the trips, and then like the fact that Europeans love to take like a proper dinner and a proper lunch every day, which is something I think like we are in the habit of just eating our lunch and running around and working during that. So it gets really hectic really quickly, for sure. And so you have to learn to prioritize. And for me, like I knew that I went to business school not for the knowledge, because I was, as I said, 7 years experience. I was staying in marketing, so I really went for the network and the friends and like stuff like that. So I would end up working. I ended up leading two different clubs, TMT and entrepreneurship, and I focused on club activities and organizing treks and all that sort of stuff, as opposed to getting A's, which some of my classmates were phenomenal at getting A's. So they focused on the grades and I focused on so yeah, knowing how to prioritize your time is really important, and what you want out of it is really important. And there's exercises that INSEAD makes you do in the first 2 weeks to help you figure that out, actually, and have those conversations with your classmates as well. So, yeah.
Yeah, there's one more thing about INSEAD I would like everyone to know is they have a fantastic coaching culture. A lot of people who go to INSEAD, they benefit a lot from the kind of counseling and coaching culture that they have in terms of helping their students and the supportive community around that. That's something I've heard time and again from many INSEAD alums. And Puran, there is a follow-up question for you again that we touched upon the whole UK graduate visa. But the question is that France has lesser duration for post-study visa, and how does that impact an Indian student who may face more pressure in finding a job because of this?
Yeah. So actually, even when I was an undergrad in the US and like obviously MBA, I feel like one thing as an Indian passport holder, you really have to be practical about where can you get a work visa. As I said, like INSEAD does recruit for like all of Europe, whether it's the UK or Germany or even like Abu Dhabi and like in the Middle East or even Singapore, of course. But I think like I personally recommend all applicants, all Indians, is like when you're writing your goals, first look at the countries where you as an Indian citizen can get like short-term and long-term employment. I would start that way because there are so many countries where we can't get that. And if you start having these goals about like living in America and being a citizen in 5 years, like stop dreaming. That doesn't happen. So just trying to find more realistic goals, but like visa-oriented goals. I would research the visa laws first, and then I would form my goals accordingly. Yeah.
All right. There's a question I think you guys, anyone can take this, that, but guys, I have, this is from Rishabh Anand. Guys, I have a 2.5 years of work experience. Should I go for a good MIM program or above average MBA programs? Because with this work experience, I may not get into a top MBA program like London Business School. What is the best I can have? I can get about 3 years work experience until September. I'm quite confused. Pranjal, you want to take that?
Firstly, I think looking at this, the WorkX quantitatively is a very narrow view, I would say, of your own capabilities. Uh, that said, if you apply today, even in September, you get to start your program only the year after. So literally, you would have a good 4 years of experience when you join in. I applied for my MBA at this point. I applied for my MBA with less than 2.5 years of experience. So there's no guarantee what it's going to be like. What really matters is, why do you want to do an MBA or an MIM program? This is a very expensive, both are very expensive degrees, both take a very important chunk of time in your life where you could do a lot of different things alternatively. So think of it, maybe rather than work just from a work angle, think of it from the perspective, what value add this degree has at this point of time in your life. Also, what is it that you really want to do after this? For example, a good MIM program or a good MIF program would be, if you're into finance, or if you want to really go into a generalist role as an MBA program, is great. It's a great idea. The only thing, the caveat being that most MIM programs, you would find people come with lesser experience than you, and you might find yourself a bit short-sold in that sense, that the things they're teaching or your peer group may not be at the same level as you, because people typically come with 0 to 2 years of experience to an MIM program when they join. So would suggest think carefully just beyond the quantity of experience, and 2.5 years isn't bad to start with. But what also matters is, what is it that you want to do? Does this 2.5 to 4 years of experience when you actually join really prepare you to make the most of MBA vis-a-vis the goal that you have after the MBA? So I think it's literally that is the question you should be asking yourself.
Okay, that's great, because someone has asked a question which I think, Pranjal, I think you answered it, right on point. Is, what are the chances for small scale entrepreneurs wanting to pursue an MBA? Does GMAT score make you stand out? And I would just repeat what Pranjal said, that looking at just your GMAT and looking at the small scale, is that you have a very narrow and a myopic view of your own profile and candidature. So you need to think broader. An MBA application process is much more than just that. And the whole reflection and research exercise typically should start a year before. So any one of you who are planning to apply for fall 2022 applications, by now you should be in the thick of things already. um, so Aishwarya has asked that could you provide link to your LinkedIn profiles? Would love to connect with all of you. Aishwarya, you can get in, see, go to our website www.theredpen.in, and I will provide everyone's LinkedIn profiles to you, and then you can get in touch with them directly, right? Um, there's a new question which has come in, which says that I have a 750 GMAT score but only a 3 on IR. Will that be a deal breaker for schools? Would you advise to retake the GMAT exam? Are any GMAT experts on the panel?
Literally the same answer. It's so narrow to think of yourself as a GMAT score or an IR score. There's so much more to your profile, so don't undersell yourself. Don't undersell your own capabilities just because something might, on one tiny bit, might be low. Especially with European schools, I think they're way less hinged on GMAT than American schools. They are far more holistic, I feel. And I mean, please, Dheeraj and Puran, please do add to that.
Yeah, because again, there's another question from Aditya Saha, which says that what are the chances for someone having 1 year of experience and a high GMAT score getting admitted to LBS? I would say, however, that 1 year of experience is very low for a European program. Unless you have a stellar profile, and there are exceptions. If you ask business schools admissions officers, they would usually say that yeah, why don't you apply, and then we see. Let's say you come from a large family business, and you've grown up working through multiple departments, and you're already kind of ready to kind of take on the mantle from the previous generation. You're like, I'm ready, I have that experience. Then then sure, I do know business schools which have admitted applicants with a 1 year of pre MBA work experience. but what kind of experience that matters. Typically, you need to create a significant amount of impact in your work experience to be able to add meaningfully to classroom discussions in an MBA classroom, which is why they give you that time window of about 2 to 5 years and 2 years or plus, where they feel that you have enough work experience and created enough impact in your workplace, so you can bring those experiences into your classroom discussions, which because it's a community, right, that benefits. That's how business schools basically thrive. um, there's a question, which speaks a little bit about US versus European program. So I'm just going to ask my question that these are usually in the top two preferred destinations. In your opinion, why should one, apart from, like Puran already touched upon that if you want to recruit in the US, then you just need to go there, right? Apart from that, the other difference between US and European programs is the 1 year versus 2 year, right? And there is this whole aspect of what's the ROI. So usually people end up picking a 1 year because, like Dheeraj, you said, I didn't want to take too much time away from work, and I was much later in life. I just wanted to come back quickly into the workforce. That could be one reason. Cost is a major reason, because 2 years of opportunity cost of lost income, plus business school fees, living expenses, versus a 1 year. So that's your other return on investment, sorry. What could be some of the advantages or disadvantages of a European program versus a US MBA program?
Just right off the bat, I think if you want to make a significant change in your career, then having that sort of 3 month internship window between the 2 years, I think that definitely helps. But yeah, but I think aside, if you want to develop some sort of real skills in that domain, and get some hands-on experience, then I think that definitely helps. But I think increasingly European schools have understood that, and they're trying to incorporate like tiny internships, 1 2 month internships into their programs as well. I did a 1 year program. I had the opportunity to do something very similar. So, but nothing beats sort of full-fledged, sort of 2 3 months of internship. But I think beyond that, I think Preeti, you've covered all the key points, and maybe there's some nuanced observations with Pranjal and Puran if you have.
I think broadly between Dheeraj and Preeti, we've covered everything. If anything, that could possibly be a difference is also if you have a particular personal proclivity or personal reason to be settled in Europe, then it's so much easier to do it with a European business school. And also, if you're planning to build a long-term life and immigrate into foreign geography, I just feel it's more structure. Your entry into these markets more structured. You don't need to worry about what happens when my H1B runs out, and then it's a lottery all over again. So that's the only thing maybe that could also be a factor. But yeah, I mean, other than that, everything is there.
Brilliant. Aishwarya has asked a question. How important is your undergrad GPA? I pursued my undergrad from an American university from the Bay Area. So I can take that question. I think your undergrad GPA, undergrad institution, undergrad subject selection, coupled with your GMAT/GRE score and the breakup of the GMAT and GRE score, all of this constitutes the academic component of your MBA application that the schools are going to weigh in the context to understand whether do you have the chops to handle the rigor of a top MBA program, the academic rigor at a top MBA program. That's what they're trying to assess, which is why your GMAT is not typically a test of math and English. It's a test of executive reasoning skills, right? So your undergrad GPA is definitely important. Okay. But it also depends, which school you're applying, and it's a holistic review of your profile. It is also compared, Aishwarya, on a regional basis. So if you are an Indian passport holder, you will be compared with other Indian applicants, who will fall into the international category. Luckily for schools like London Business School and INSEAD and Oxford side, the international community is huge. Okay, unlike some schools in the US, about 60% is the domestic applicant pool and 40% in international, out of which there's a very small section reserved for international applicants. So I think in Europe, I think definitely, I think the scope is more, but don't look at just one data point from the undergrad GPA. Look at other factors as well. Also, do use the optional essay which European schools do provide for. And essays for European schools are not really optional. They do say this time and again. They're just smiling because we had touched upon this for one of the applicants. It's not really optional. You must use that optional essay to explain, to give as much information about yourself that will help you stand out, in the hyper competitive applicant pool, right? So I think look at it from that context, and definitely doing taking your GMAT. Also try to take courses from MBA Math or HBX Core, and there is Wharton Business Fundamentals course provided by Coursera. So people who come from non-business backgrounds, I usually encourage them to take these courses to kind of show your readiness to for a data driven, let's say, academic class in business school. All right. Rudra is saying that this is the second session that I'm at, hosted by Miss Preeti. It's very standout in my view. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I do want to say that there is a ton of information which I have, and I think all these three folks have, and I just feel like we are running out of time, and we should probably talk all day and cover so much about these schools, because usually I want everyone to be very generous with information and share as much as possible, but I don't know how much time we have. I'll try to take one or two questions more. What are product management specialization B school in UK or Europe, considering a work experience of 5 years?
I mean, I would say, wasn't that why the Tech MBA was designed in the US? I feel like anyone who wants to do product, I would actually recommend you look at the Kellogg Tech MBA, and there's a couple others in the US. I mean, don't get me wrong. Yeah,
Cornell, yeah.
I'm sure some of the European ones are good too, and they've got those specializations, but that's exactly why they were developed. So I would recommend you look at the US ones, Kellogg, Cornell, the other ones Preeti just mentioned. Yeah.
All right. There's someone, before had asked something about, PhD. So I'm just going to go back and look for that in the comments, because I don't want to miss that question. This question came on pretty early on. This was, I think, for Pranjal. Yeah, my wife is in the PhD program in London, and we plan to settle in London. So would I have the option of getting a lot of campus placements in London after a top MBA course from Europe?
If it's pretty much about London, then maybe the easiest way is to do your MBA from UK, because you have that kind of opportunities to interact with offices in London, because London at the end of the day is quite competitive for the campus placements, especially if you're going for some niche companies or ideas. That said, given the fact that I don't know whether you would need a visa to work in London if your wife's pursuing a PhD program, because I think at least with the working visa of a spouse, you can pursue a career in London. Definitely, if you don't need a visa, then it improves your chances to work with a lot of tech startups, etc. Again, a lot of it's dependent on what you really want to do. But that said, or probably Puran can also attest to this, and Dheeraj as well, that if you do come from other European geographies, you can. INSEAD is definitely an exception. You can get into London. It's considerably harder because you're competing against a bunch of people who probably get to be in the offices for every random event, or get to be on coffee chats with these companies quite a lot more often than you would if you were, let's say, based out of Paris or Germany.
Yeah, well said. The other is, Tejas has asked this question: how much does an international experience count towards getting an admit into a top European school? It definitely counts. I think Dheeraj just touched upon this, that, he had traveled across 40 countries. Puran shared that, he had lived and worked internationally as well when he went to business school. So it definitely counts, because, it's not just that it's not like checking a box that, oh, I have international experience. It's what you have learned from that experience. Uh, what, how has it transformed you, and how would those experience benefit your classmates in a business school class? That's what I think you need to kind of bring out in that application when you craft your story to do that. Aishwarya, does it make a difference if you are an American citizen? Yes, for sure, it will make a difference because schools are looking for diversity. So, given that you're an American citizen, I'm assuming if you are in the US, and you come with an American experience, an Indian with an American experience, definitely it'll definitely make a difference because that's a differentiator in your profile. Um, does work between 10 to 12 year for Indian candidate has have any kind of challenge or disadvantage in the European school application? I would not think so, but I would throw this to the panel if anyone wants to say that, let's say, more than higher than average work experience. Will that hurt?
My position on this is, why do you need an MBA? If you can justify it, it's fine. After 12 years of experience, if you want to leave everything and pursue a full-time MBA, what is the reason behind that? Typically, MBAs are to get a career jump or a career switch. And after 12 years, what kind of a career jump are you expecting, or what kind of a career switch do you want to make, and whether it's reasonable, right? Whether it makes sense. If a school doesn't believe that they can help you with that aspiration, then they might not consider you, right? So you have to be very clear about why you want to do it. And if you can justify it, I think that's perfectly fine. If not, then I think you might need to think it through and consider an executive MBA option or other routes.
All right.
Just
Yeah, Pranjal, go ahead.
Just to quickly add to Dheeraj's answer, there are certain programs which are tailored for candidates with more experience. For example, LBS has a Sloan Masters program tailored at candidates with higher work ex than an MBA, and maybe you should check those programs out as well as an alternative to an MBA.
I agree with Pranjal, and I was going to say that the Sloan Fellows program at London Business School, at MIT, both are for applicants who have minimum of 10 years of work experience. You should also look at Stanford's MSX program, which is a 1 year residential program, again for applicants with a minimum of 10 years of work experience. So those are three programs which we usually recommend. All right. I think I'm getting the signal from GMAT Club that time is up. We did not touch upon internships. We did not have the time to touch upon scholarships. But guys, do reach out to us, and we'll be more than happy to answer your questions one on one. Well, thank you very much, for showing up, and good luck with your MBA applications. Thank you to you guys, Puran, Dheeraj, Pranjal. Thank you so much for your generosity, and hope I'll direct any inquiries if they come specifically for you in the next couple of days.
Absolutely.